Hello, sports fans. It's me, Sportsman Z, and I'm back with another game. Today we have Game 2 of the American League Championship Series for 1978. If you will recall, the Boston Red Sox won Game 1 of the series and are up 1-0 now on the Kansas City Royals. And we now are about to start Game 2. There were no injuries in the last game, so everybody is still eligible to play in this game that was playing in the other one. And so the lineups will be the same as they were in Game 1. The pitchers, though, obviously will be different. And for the Kansas City Royals, they will be sending up Mr. Dennis Leonard to pitch against the 1978 Red Sox lineup. And the 1978 Red Sox will be sending up Dennis Eckersley to pitch against the Kansas City Royal lineup. So, without further ado, and we are still in Boston, and so without further delay, let's get into the game. The Royals will again lead off with Willie Wilson, who is again playing left field. And he gets a 3-5, which is a double 1-4 or a single. That's going to be a single for Willie Wilson. So that's a hit given up by the Eck. And he is a double-A stealer. He is going to go, even though he's going on a good arm. And what do we got? Fisk is a -4. And stealing second for a double-A is, yeah, he still makes it. So he gets a stolen base. So let's see. They have a place to mark that over here? I guess not. I guess I'll mark it. So now Willie Wilson is at second base with no outs, and that brings up Amos Otis. Amos Otis gets a 5-11, and 5-11 on Eckersley's card is a ground ball to first base, and the first baseman is George Scott, and he's a 2, and that's a 13 and a 2. And that's going to be a 2-base error. So George Scott makes a 2-base error. And that scores Willie Wilson. And so we got E4. And we got to mark that down against George Scott. That brings up George Brett with a man at second and still no outs. And he gets a 2-9, which is a fly ball to right field, so that's one away. Fly out 9. And Hal McRae is up. Hal McRae gets a 2-5, which is a ground ball shortstop A, so that's a 6-4. 2 away. And that brings up Darrell Porter, and Darrell Porter gets a 4-10, which is a ground ball to third base, and Hobson is a 4. He's the third baseman. That's 12-4. 12-4 is an out with no runners on. So he goes 5-3, or 5-4. Or wait, no, 5-3. All right, so 1 run comes in for the Royals, and it was an unearned run. And that brings up Rick Burleson to lead off for the Red Sox in the bottom of the first. He gets a 4-7 off Dennis Leonard, which is a second base X. The second baseman is Frank White, and he's a 1, and that's a 16. That may actually be, was that the error? No, 17 is. So he's out. Rick Burleson goes 4-3. And then Jerry Remy's up, and Jerry Remy gets a 3-7, which is a strikeout. And that's going to be the first strikeout of the game for either pitcher, and definitely for Leonard. And then Jim Rice is up, and he gets a 2-5, and that's a fly ball center field B. Fly out to 8. No runs for Boston. And that brings up the Kansas City Royals in the top of the second. And they will be sending up Al Cowens to face Dennis Eckersley. He gets a 6-3, which is a ground ball to the pitcher. And Eckersley is a two-fielding pitcher, as they mostly are. And that is an out. So Cowens is out. Ground ball. Ground ball 1-3. And that brings up Frank White, one of my favorites of all time, 5-6, and that's a strikeout for Frank White, and that's the first strikeout of the game for Dennis Eckersley. And that brings up Clint Hurdle, and Clint Hurdle gets a 6-10. The recently unemployed Clint Hurdle hits a fly ball to left field, so fly out to 7, and no runs for the Royals in the second inning. And in the bottom of the second, the Red Sox will lead off with Yaz, Mr. Yastrzemski, and he gets a 6-7, which is a ground ball shortstop off Leonard. The shortstop is Freddie Patek, and he is a shortstop too, and that's a 10. That might be something, and it is. It's something big. It's a two-base error for Patek. So Yastrzemski gets on by a two-base error himself, and that's an E6. And we have to go over to Mr. Patek's column and give him the E. And that brings up Carlton Fisk, and he gets a 5-8, and that's a fly ball center field B, one away. Fly out to 8. Freddie Lynn, and he gets a 1-7, which is a ground ball third base B, and that's 2 away. So that's 5-3, and that brings up Dwight Evans. Dwight Dewey Evans gets a 4-5, and that's a strikeout, and that is the second strikeout for Dennis Leonard, and that takes us to the top of the third. And in the top of the third, the Royals will lead off with Freddie Patek. And he gets a 5-7, which is a strikeout. And that is the second strikeout for Eckersley. Both pitchers pitching really quite well here. 6-7 on Eckersley is a single for Willie Wilson. And a hit allowed by Eckersley, and he will try to steal again. And this time, is he out? Let's see. We got Fisk with a -4 arm. Going to second is a 1-17. He just barely makes it in. So that's 2 stolen bases for him. 2 stolen bases off the Fisk-Eckersley combination. And Amos Otis is up, and he gets a 1-8, which is a walk. So I guess the stolen base really didn't matter that much. So there's a walk by Eckersley. And that brings up George Brett. Not the guy you want in this situation if you're Eckersley, but he gets a fly ball center field. So he flies out to 8. There's 1 away. And that brings up Hal McRae, and Hal McRae gets a 6-7, which is a single. And that's another hit given up by Eckersley. And the lead runner is Wilson, because this is at my discretion whether to send him. And obviously Wilson's a running 1-17, and this is a 6, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's to the right fielder. And the way I do the way I do it, the way I play it is, even though it's taking into account from the advanced side of the card, I still look at the throwing arm on the advanced side of the card rather than the rather than use whatever the elementary rating throwing arm is. So it's kind of a hybrid as far as that goes, but that's the only way that I do that. But anyway, that's Evans, and Evans has a -5 arm, so it would be a 1-12 going home, and I don't think they want to risk that with the bases loaded and only one out. No, they don't. So Willie Wilson will hold up. He's not going to test the arm of Evans. And that brings up Porter. And Porter gets a home run 1-18, so it's a very good thing they did not do that. But he doesn't get the home run. He gets a triple, though. So a triple knocks in all three runners. Darryl Porter hitting a triple. Who would have known? Triple knocks in that guy, knocks in that guy, and knocks in that guy. And Eckersley gives up a hit and 3 runs, 3 earned runs. And that brings up Al Cowens with still 1 out and a runner at third. The Red Sox will bring the infield in. And that's a 5-8, and that's a fly ball B. Didn't matter, knocks in the run. And Cowens gets a sac fly. And that's another run. And that brings up Frank White, and he gets a 3-7, which is a ground ball, third base B. So Frank White grounds out 5-3, but not before 4 runs come in that inning, and now Kansas City has a 5-1 lead. And that's going to be it for Eckersley. And they will bring in, the Red Sox will bring in Andy Hassler to pitch. And Boston is up in the bottom of the third, but they're down by 4 runs. And Butch Hobson's up, and he gets a 3-8, and that's a ground ball, third base A, 1 away. 5-3. George Scott, 5-10 on Dennis Leonard is a catcher 2. And that's a 6. 6 and a 2 at catcher is out on dribbler, 2 away. And so that's 2-3. And that brings up Rick Burleson. And he gets a 6-6, which is a fly ball right field B. So he flies out 9, no runs. Top of the 4th. Clint Hurdle comes up and he gets a 3-8, which is a strikeout right between 2 possible base hits. So yeah, we're in the 4th. And that's a strikeout for Hassler. Freddie Patek gets a 3-9, which is a ground ball shortstop A. So 6-3, 2 away. And that brings up Willie Wilson, who has been a real wrecking force here, and he gets a 5-4, which is a fly ball to center. And that's Freddie Lynn, and he's a 1, and that's going to be a fly out. Fly out to 8. And the Royals come up with no runs there. But they got to believe that this is not something that they want to just rest on their laurels and stick with that and not really concern themselves with getting more runs, because tough Boston lineup could come back and catch up to him. So anyway, Jerry Remy is up, and he gets a 2-2, which is a ground ball first base B, and that's one away. So, yeah. Ground out 4. That brings up Jim Rice. Jim Rice gets a 6-6, and that's going to be a fly ball right field B. Fly out to 9. And that brings up Yaz. And Yaz gets a 5-9, which is a strikeout. And, it looks like Dennis Leonard has a no-hitter going, on top of the fact that his team got him 5 runs. And, no, I'm not really concerned about jinxing him. Not that I really have any vested interest in whether he gets the no-hitter, but I'm just pointing it out. He has one. So, that brings up... Now, wait a minute. Yeah, they got no runs there. So that brings up the Royals in the top of the 5th with Amos Otis. He gets a 6-10, which is a catcher's card. Catcher is a 1. That's a 15. 15 and 1 is a foul out, so 1 away. Amos Otis. Foul out to 2. That brings up George Brett, and he gets a 4-4, which is a fly ball center field C. Fly out to 8. And that brings up Hal McRae, and Hal McRae gets a 6-7, which is a single. So Hassler gives up a hit, and that brings up Darrell Porter. And Darrell Porter gets a 3-8, which is a ground ball third base B, but he's the one that's responsible for a good percentage of the damage, though, to Boston in this particular game. But they get no runs in the 5th. And now we go to the bottom of the 5th, and Carlton Fisk is up in the bottom of the 5th. He gets a 5-9, which is a strikeout. And that's going to be the 4th strikeout for Leonard. Fred Lynn gets a 2-3, which is a ground ball second base A, so he's out. 4-3. And that brings up Dwight Evans, and he gets a 5-11, and that is a ground ball first base X. And Clint Hurdle is a 4, and that's a 15 and 4, and that's a 1 base error for Clint Hurdle, but it does not ruin the no-hitter. So who was that? Dwight Evans? Yeah, so he's on by an E3, and Clint Hurdle gets an error. However, the error by Hurdle does keep the inning going. And Butch Hobson comes up, and he gets a 3-7, which is a strikeout. And so that's the 5th strikeout for Dennis Leonard. Still has the no-hitter intact, folks, through 5. And here comes Al Cowens. Al Cowens gets a 3-5, which is a single. So that's the second base hit, given up by Andy Hassler. And Cowens is a B, he'll stay. Frank White is up. He gets a 5-3 off Hassler, which is a fly ball to left. The left fielder is a 1, that's Yaz. 6 and 1 is probably an out, I would guess. And it is. 1 away, so fly out to 7. And that brings up Clint Hurdle. That brings up 5-7, which is a second base X. Second baseman is a 2. That's Jerry Remy. And that's a 10. 10-2 is an out double play. So the Hurdle hits into a 4-6-3 double play, and Boston gets no runs in the 5th, and here we are in the 6th with Dennis Leonard still pitching a no-hitter. George Scott comes up and he gets a 5-9, and that's a strikeout. Dennis Leonard pitching incredible right now. Rick Burleson gets a 1-9, which is a fly ball center field B, 2 away. And that brings up Jerry Remy. And Jerry Remy gets a 3-8 ground ball shortstop. So he bounces out 6-3. And now we still have an intact no-hitter through through 6. Yeah, through 6. So now we go to the top of the 7th. And that brings up Kansas City, and for Kansas City, Freddie Patek will come up. And he gets a 1-5, which is a ground ball shortstop, 1 away. So he goes 6-3. And that brings up Willie Wilson. Willie Wilson gets a 2-10, which is a fly ball center field B, 2 away. Fly out to 8. And that brings up Amos Otis, and Amos Otis gets a 4-8, which is a single. And Hassler has just given up his 3rd hit. And that brings up George Brett. George Brett gets a 5-8, which is a fly ball to right field, and they are out of the inning. Yeah, that was 9. Fly out to 9. And now we go to the bottom of the 7th, and I am going to look and see if there is a better first baseman defensively than Clint Hurdle, and there really has to be, you would think. Although possibly not. There is, and he is going to come in. Pete Lecoq will be coming in defensively for Clint Hurdle. Because we really don't want to see the we don't want to see that Leonard no-hitter disappear, and Leonard doesn't want to see that either, by the way. And he will bat in Hurdle's spot, and Hurdle hits the showers. And then Boston comes up, and they will bring up Jim Rice in the 7th. Now watch, probably what's going to happen is the very first batter, Jim Rice, will probably get a base hit. But we will see. 2-6, no he doesn't. It's a ground ball shortstop A, 1 away. So 6-3. That brings up Carl Yastrzemski. He gets a 5-8 off Leonard. That's a fly ball center field B. So, and that brings up Carlton Fisk, and Carlton Fisk gets a 2-8, which is a ground ball third base B. So he bounces out 5-3, and through 7, Leonard still has the no-hitter going. And no runs for Boston. And that brings up the Royals and Hal McRae in the 8th. And he gets a 3-5, which is a strikeout, 1 away. Hassler with his 2nd strikeout of the game. Darrell Porter, 111, is a strikeout. Okay, yeah, over here. 3rd strikeout of the game, and Al Collins is up, and that's a 5-2, which is a bounce out to first. So he gets a ground out to 3. And no runs come in there. And we go to the bottom of the 8th. And Fred Lynn is up. And Fred Lynn gets a 110, which is a pop out to 2nd. So pop out to 4 in the 8th. And Leonard is 5 outs away. Dwight Evans comes up. He gets a 1-9, which is a strikeout. Leonard strikes out his 7th guy, and Butch Hobson. And Butch Hobson gets a 2-5, which is a strikeout. Dennis Leonard, my friends, is 3 outs away from a no-hit shutout in the playoffs, and he's only going to be he might only lose a perfect game because of the fact that his team committed 2 errors. But anyway, Frank White is up in the 9th right now, so let's deal with that, and he grounds out to third base. Ground out to 5, 1 away. Pete Lecoq gets a 6-7 off a Hassler, which is a single. So coming on for Clint Hurdle, he gets a single, and Freddie Patek is up, and he gets a 3-8, which is a ground ball B, third base, 2 away. And so he gets, that's a fielder's choice. And Willie Wilson. And Willie Wilson gets a 2-7, which is a ground ball to the shortstop. Ground out 6-3. All right, here we go. This is it right here. This is it. Dennis Leonard with a no-hitter going into the 9th inning. And George Scott is up, and he gets a 1-5, and that's a walk. Okay, that's a walk. That's fine. I mean, it keeps the inning going too, so that's a little concerning. And that's the first walk of the game for Leonard. And Rick Burleson comes up, and he gets a 4-7, which is a ground ball second base, and the second baseman is Frank White, who's a 1. You got to believe that's going to be a double play. Second base, 5. Yes, it is a double play. Do you believe this? Because really, I don't believe this, and I'm glad it's on tape. So we've got a 4-3, or a 4-5-3, or 4-6-3 double play. And now with 2 down in the 9th, no hitter intact for Dennis Leonard, Jerry Remy is the guy who has to try to break this up. And he gets a 3-7, which is a strikeout. Unbelievable. Do you believe it? And that's the 9th strikeout, 0 hits allowed, 9 innings pitched for Dennis Leonard, who definitely gets the well-earned win. And the loss goes to Eckersley. And Hassler actually pitched his butt off. And he pitched 6 innings in relief. But what a game. Unbelievable. The Red Sox are shut out by Dennis Leonard and shut down by Dennis Leonard, who pitches a no-hit shutout against the 1978 Red Sox. Incredible. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. And coming live from Boston, it is Sportsman Z, Bob Zolke, signing off, and the next game will be in Kansas City with the series tied at 1.